The Magna Carta originated as a desperate peace treaty between an autocratic King John and a group of rebelling barons on June 15, 1215 at Runnymede. Its core intent was to limit absolute royal power, guarantee fair trials, and protect aristocratic property rights from arbitrary taxation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The charter failed to prevent the First Barons' War, but it survived through centuries of conflict to become an enduring symbol of liberty and the rule of law. In modern times, the historic document has even been mistakenly co-opted by fringe groups, known as the Magna Carta Lawful Rebellion, promoting anti-government conspiracy theories. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The exact phrasing you are looking for might trace back to different historical contexts, such as Clause 61, which historically granted barons the right to rebel if the king broke the rules, or literary references, such as Lord Byron's sarcastic nod to the two-penny loaf of rebellion, in an 1819 letter. 1, 2. Magna Carta has been set for 800 years of rebellion for our rights. The 20th of June 2015. The Magna Carta has been a symbol of basic rights for 800 years. But those rights were won through struggle and rebellion, writes Tom Orsag. The 800th anniversary of the Magna Carta, or Great Charter, between King John and his rebellious barons will be celebrated throughout the English-speaking world this month as the beginnings of the rule of law. Tony Abbott described it as the foundation stone of our democracy, in launching commemoration events in Canberra. But our democratic rights are the product of continual struggle, not some ancient British law in place from time immemorial. What led to its signing was rebellion against the king, and over those 8 centuries the Charter has been a source of inspiration to many further rebellions in Britain and around the world. The Magna Carta was a product of the demands of feudal landlords, who forced the King of England to sign a document limiting his powers. The document, forced on King John by open civil warfare, established the right for some form of trial, and rights against arbitrary arrest and detention by the king's men. The original document was largely about dividing wealth and privileges among the existing feudal elite. Even the rights in Magna Carta for free men did not apply to fully 85% of the population. However, the document was taken up later by subsequent revolutionary movements to press their own demands for greater freedom. The revolt and the signing of the Charter were not a peculiarly British event of the medieval era, as some would have us believe. In the same period, charters of liberties were granted by European kings and queens in Leon and Aragon, modern Spain, at Constance, to the Lombard League of northern Italian towns, in Naples and Sicily, in towns in northwestern Belgium like Ghent, and even in Hungary. The Italian cities of the time were burgeoning centers of economic growth and political self-government, expressed in charters that recognized their right to exist. There was a German saying, "Town air makes you free." The City of London was also moving more and more along these lines and had its own clause in the Magna Carta. Any cities and towns in Europe were very small at the time. The overwhelming bulk of the population lived and labored on the land, and were classed as serfs, legally controlled by the local lord of the manor. King John, while no different to his European contemporaries, established reputation as crude, rapacious and venal. When one of John's Irish barons refused a summons to court in 1207, his wife and son were jailed and starved to death. Shortly after, 27 Welsh hostages held by the king were executed, when their baronial fathers refused to display groveling loyalty to John. Whereas the lords financed and cleared new lands and were the driving force in the spread of some improvements to agricultural technology like the first early form of mechanization, the water mill, the king was trying to expand his lands in England and France by plunder. The king's taxes impinged on the barons' and lords' own ability to accumulate wealth. The decade-long reign of Richard I, immediately before his brother John became king in 1199, saw more money extracted from England's taxpayers than any previous 10-year period. This included money for the Crusades, and the methods he used to raise it set new standards in royal rapacity, according to Geoffrey Hindley, in his A Brief History of the Magna Carta. King John lost the French parts of his kingdom in 1214, and along with them the respect of his English barons. Not only had he imposed huge increases in taxation, but the money he had raised for his wars in France was now wasted. By April 1215, a civil war had begun against King John. The insurgent barons seized the city of London. They had joined forces with a Welsh nationalist uprising, triggered by John's execution of the 27 baronial sons. The English rebels offered the Scottish king control of northern England. Outmaneuvered, outflanked and fighting on more than one front, King John was forced to negotiate, and signed the Magna Carta in June. He then proceeded to reopen the civil war a few months later. Pope Innocent III weighed in on John's side, saying the Magna Carta was null and void because John had signed it, under duress. King John's premature death in October 1216 saw the Magna Carta reissued in the name of the new king, along with the Charter of the Forest, limiting the king's claims to areas near royal woodlands. The forests in those days were a valuable source of wood for heating and cooking, game as food and herbs for medicine. In the subsequent reaffirmation by future kings, the Magna Carta established that no one could be arrested without trial, not even by the king, as well as the right to a speedy and fair trial. The barons, in arguing for their own rights, had inadvertently opened the door for the rights of every free man. Revolutionaries. These principles were taken up again in 1628, when the Petition of Right was drafted to limit the authority of the autocratic Charles I. The Parliament refused to authorize taxation for war by Charles I, unless he agreed to the demands in the petition. Parliament fought under the banner of the Magna Carta. Edward Coke, dismissed by as Chief Justice of the King's Bench after a clash with the King over the extent of royal prerogative, argued that Magna Carta was still in force. The King instead insisted on his own authority to imprison those who refused to hand over taxes raised without Parliament's consent. That argument led to civil war in England in 1642, and escalated into a revolution that saw Charles lose his head to a parliamentary executioner in January 1649. This was a radical step which challenged the age-old ideas that kings had a special link to God and governed by virtue of the divine right. Underlying this was the growth of a new class of capitalists in the towns, especially the City of London, who produced wealth in a quite different way to the old feudal lords. The modern idea of the rule of law dates from this period. The new capitalists wanted a clear written framework of laws. They were opposed to the idea that laws could be overridden on the decisions of the king or rival courts, as their decisions could be arbitrary and uncertain. Capitalists required certainty that their investments would be protected and that contracts would be honored. They needed regulation of the competition between them, lest the competition get out of hand. More radical groups involved in the English Revolution, such as the Levellers and Diggers, also used the Magna Carta to argue for forms of economic and as well as legal equality. They sought to extend the new freedoms being won by the emerging capitalist class across the whole society, arguing for the right, freedom, safety, and well-being of every particular man, woman, and child in England. The Leveller leader John Lilburne cited the Magna Carta while he was on trial and refused to kneel while in the dock. Gerard Winstanley, of the Diggers, referred to it when they occupied vacant land in 1649 to grow their own food. The American War of Independence from England in 1776 also drew its legal inspiration from the Magna Carta, as a revolt of free Englishmen with legal rights against a plundering king. When the English working class movement of the 1830s and 1840s tried to express their rights in a People's Charter, they drew the idea from the Magna Carta. Struggle for rights. Our rights are not protected by some ancient law. They constantly have to be fought for and re-won. It was illegal in Melbourne until May 1969 to hand out leaflets against the Vietnam War, due to a City of Melbourne by law. A campaign involving mass arrests for defying the ban, including the arrest of the deputy leader of the Labour Party opposition, won that right. Queensland Premier Joh Bjelke-Petersen banned political street marches in 1977, until a campaign of mass defiance won back the right. Even today there are still police attempts to attack the right to protest and dissent. The Magna Carta still has modern resonances. The rule of law is undermined by governments worldwide seeking to restrict basic human rights in the name of fighting terrorism. It has been used by opponents of Bush and Blair's use of rendition and torture after 9/11 in Guantanamo Bay and in third country, black site, torture centers. The U.S. Supreme Court declared torture in Guantanamo unconstitutional in 2008, citing the Magna Carta. Harking back to King John's autocratic style, George W. Bush told his National Security Council in January 2003, "I do not need to explain why I say things. That's the interesting thing about being president." Tony Abbott has extolled Magna Carta as establishing that decency, civilization, human rights utterly depend upon the rule of law. But as he increases police and ASIO powers, imposes detention without charge through preventative detention orders on terror suspects and extreme measures against refugees, we can point to his hypocrisy about his beloved rule of law. We will never be equally legally when society is so sharply divided economically, which is more and more the case with the growth in inequality in the neoliberal era. While it was convenient for the capitalist class to champion freedom against the old aristocratic order, now that they rule they need to restrict the freedoms of the working class below them. Strikes and working class action remain either criminalized, or possible only after clearly near impossible legal hurdles. The fight for equality remains bound up in the fight for equality before the law. The legal system is not law. Under UK law, there is no recognized right to lawful rebellion. Claims that citizens can bypass laws, avoid paying taxes, or overthrow the government by invoking Article 61 inches of the Magna Carta or other historical documents are entirely invalid and carry serious legal consequences. 1. 2. The legal reality of lawful rebellion. The Magna Carta myth. Adherents often cite Clause 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta, which permitted barons to rebel if the king broke the charter. However, this clause was annulled by the Pope shortly after it was written, was not included in any subsequent versions of the charter, and is no longer part of UK law. 1. 2. 3. No legal protection. Courts in the UK, as outlined in official government resources like the UK Parliament Education Guide, treat such arguments as pseudolaw. 1. 2. Prosecution. Attempting to act on lawful rebellion, such as refusing to pay taxes or threatening government officials, routinely results in criminal convictions and prison sentences. 1. 2. 3. The only legally recognized avenues for changing government policy or expressing dissent in the UK involve working within the established democratic system. This includes voting, contacting your elected officials, or participating in lawful, peaceful protests. 1. 2. 3. To help me understand what you're looking to achieve, could you clarify? Are you looking for the rules around lawful, peaceful protest? Are you trying to verify specific claims you read online or in a forum? Google says, lawful rebellion is a concept often cited by anti-government, freemen on the land, or sovereign citizen movements. Adherents falsely claim that citizens can legally ignore modern laws, taxes, and state authority by declaring themselves in a state of rebellion against the government. 1. 2. The core myth, Article 61. The concept is almost entirely rooted in a misunderstanding of Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta. 1. 2. The original text. Article 61 established a committee of 25 barons authorized to rebel against King John if he broke the terms of the Magna Carta. 1. The reality. This clause was a temporary peace treaty. It was annulled by Pope Innocent III within 10 weeks of being sealed and was completely removed from all subsequent reissues of the Magna Carta. 1. 3. The legal reality. In the UK and other Commonwealth countries, lawful rebellion does not exist in modern law. 1. Courts do not recognize any mechanism to bypass current legislation or taxation by invoking historic medieval documents. Legal authorities, such as the UK Parliament, emphasize that these concepts are legally invalid and are dismissed in all official courts of law. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As discussed by users on platforms like Reddit, attempting to use these pseudo-legal arguments to avoid paying bills, council tax, or traffic fines typically results in court convictions or enforcement action. 1, 2, 3. If you are dealing with legal obligations or facing disputes, you can find accurate information about your rights and responsibilities from these official resources. Learn about UK law and justice through the UK Government Services. Read the UK Parliament Guide to understand the true historical context and current legal status of the Magna Carta. Access free, regulated legal assistance through the Citizens Advice Network. 1, 2. Would you like to find official guidance on specific legal processes, such as navigating council tax or traffic disputes? The government a fiction Wizard of Oz. The people are natural, who know what's correct and what is wrong. We as the people created the government to serve the people. When no rule of law exists, it's the people who have the control. Do not poke the Leo, within we have courage.
The National Archive. Our guest of honor was His Royal Highness Prince Charles. We were celebrating the 800th anniversary of the Magna Carta, originally signed in June 1215.
It's such a privilege and honor to welcome you to Magna Carta 2015, Global Empowerment Through Rule of Law.